are more than entertainment. They're a bold, transformative storytelling medium. They show us what it means to trust our instincts, lean in on our communities, rise after every fall, and fight for what's right again and again, no matter the cost. Our next guests are authors and podcasters. Really is slacker, and really I'm the slacker of the group. You guys already know this. Okay, they're here to talk about their new comic book, Comics Lit, Volume 1, and how comics can help when times are tough. Please welcome Tanya Todd and Seth Singleton. Put it together. Let's go. Been a year?
Yes.
It has. I know, but it's been a fun year. It's good.
How much?
Thank you.
Keep going?
As long as you're comfortable.
Got it.
Hold on. I had this brilliant idea. I was going to bring a stand. We were going to do all this setup. And as we got here, I was like, yeah, I'm going to just ask for a friend and ask for a favor. And
Thank you.
No problem.
We're all here to support each other, right? Thank you.
All right, well, guys, how's it been?
It's been wild.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
But we're feeling very blessed.
Good. As I think we all agree here. All right, well, before we get into all of the things and everything that we're going to talk about here, I'm going to let you guys just ride it out on this one. We've got a segment on our show called Growing Up Geeky. We talked about this before. What did you guys geek out on when you were kids?
Catwoman, Star Wars, vampires, all things I know. I think I told you this. I'm the type of person where people were afraid of vampires. I was more going to sleep like this, like just
Give me the bag.
Yeah, just, I don't know if you noticed, but my neck is longer than most people's. You know, let it be an asset for something rather than a reason for people to make fun of me.
She's just like, take me, please.
Take me, please.
I can't say it that well. I mean, there's a delivery and then there's what we all aspire to. And that's an aspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as what I would geek out to when I was very young, it started with things like The Incredible Hulk, which was just such a transformative experience for me when I was a kid. To watch this David Banner, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, turn into Lou Ferrigno, and then it transferred into a lot of fun things like Greatest American Hero, which was a lovely experience for me. So I wasn't aware of it, but from that to Superman 78, all these different introductions to superheroes, by the time my friends found me in like 7th, 8th grade, and they were true comic fans, they were like, dude, why haven't you come into the fold? Welcome, let's talk comics. And from that point on, I was a diehard fan. I got my first Flash number 49 from my buddy, and I was very upset because Flash died, and I was very angry. I was like, why would you give me a comic of my favorite guy and he dies? And he goes, well, you gotta get the next one. And I'm like, there is no next one, he's dead. Yeah, and he's like, no, number 50.
You hadn't learned the lesson yet that nobody truly dies in comic books.
I had a very difficult time processing that. Like, yeah, I was like, wait, they come back?
Yeah.
They come back? And then I got number 50, and then I realized as I read more comics, like more and more characters came back. They died. And then it was an inside joke. You'd read comics and they're like, oh, don't worry. They'll be back in 3 or 4 weeks. We never stayed that long. We're comic book superheroes.
Kind of like vampires.
Right. I mean, like, there's 2 characters that were supposed to stay dead, and neither of them are dead now.
Those were the rules.
Yeah,
right?
Jason Todd is back. He's been back for a while.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
But also, so the one character they said that was never going to come back, right, is alive in another universe now. Right? So, Uncle Ben. Yes, he's dead in almost every universe except for one. Right? In the mainstream universe where Gwen Stacy is the main Spider-Man, right?
That makes sense.
Obviously because Peter dies in that universe, so Uncle Ben is still alive in that universe.
But that would make sense.
Yeah. But I mean, like, that's the whole thing, is because the guiding moment for Gwen in that universe was that Peter died, right? Which, for those of you who are Spider-Man fans, know that when Gwen died, Uncle Ben was the first thing that turned in, but when Gwen died, that truly is what turned him into Spider-Man. So, it's like nobody's truly dead in comics.
And as a Flash fan, I was introduced to Wally West. And the entire narrative around Wally West was his life is rooted on living against the shadow of Barry Allen, who gave his life in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the rule then was Barry will never come back. Barry made the ultimate sacrifice. We will never change that. Never say never in comics.
Right.
Just as a rule, never say never, because then it was also Bucky. Bucky's never coming back. Bucky will never come back. So we're going to tell you about the Winter Soldier. Wait, Bucky came back?
Yeah.
And yeah, the rule about never coming back.
The same thing with,
That was particularly well done.
It was well.
but it's the same thing with Captain America. Captain America was supposed to be dead and never come back. Or if you're reading the comics now, you know he's back. So it's like, he was back like a month later. He wasn't even dead for that long.
They didn't even do the funeral.
Yeah, like
The first
crossbow
one-
shot him in the head, and that was it. And then, and then he's back like a month later. So it's like,
There are no rules. That's the first rule.
Right.
Everything is possible. Plus, I love that there's that challenge of imagination, because as you pointed out, most would say, oh, it's wrong to bring back Bucky. But then if you do it in the right way, if you offer a story that people say, wow, he came back in a way that I want to keep reading.
Right.
Then you demonstrate that the imagination is capable of overcoming any possible obstacle. My favorite thing I've been saying to a lot of friends recently is, it's funny how when you look at it the right way, every obstacle is just a stepping stone. It's simply that question of how are you going to climb on top of it and then use that leverage to your advantage.
right.
It's always true from a certain point of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a fun one.
And it's always a good way to repackage a character. You kill them off, and it's really killing off that persona, right?
This
And
version of it.
right, and they come back. And the same thing.
And what did they learn from that process?
Right.
How are they using that to be a different version of themselves?
Right. The Red Hood is a good example of that, right? Same thing with Captain America came back as a bad guy, but I mean, like, he didn't put like that whole thing right there. Earlier we were talking about Damian Wayne. So Damian dies, comes back, and he comes back in the weirdest way possible. But he is so much more interesting of a character now than he was even before. I halfway hated Damian before he died, so I was like, yeah.
You were not
Yeah, I think a lot of people did like Damian Wayne.
His history, he got there honestly.
Right. Now he's somebody that is capable of holding up the mantle at this point. So.
Which is where we wanted to land.
Right. So we just went off on a tangent on comics, which is, it's what happens when you put three comic book nerds on the stage together.
We just brought you to watch us have a conversation.
Exactly.
About nerd stuff.
About nerdy things. So for both of you guys, just for everybody here who may not know you guys already, where are you from?
So I am from Vegas, so when you said we're going to hear it in Vegas, let my people hear it.
Right.
And I'm an author, actress, activist, and a director. I also happen to be the editor and one of the contributors for Comics Lit, which is the reason that we're here, is to promote Comics Lit. But again, this is all about fandoms and appreciating art and appreciating each other's fandoms and art. And so that's why we are doing this panel conversation, because we know that this type of art can reach others and help others through really difficult times. And let's face it, we're in them right now.
Right.
Comics have always been a refuge for me. They are something that I have returned to time and time again. Some of my favorite collections are something that I go to remind myself about why these stories mean so much to me, and also why the stories I want to tell are so important that I keep picking up the pen and writing. I keep sitting down at the computer. I keep asking the question, what will you write today? Can you keep doing this? The belief behind that, the power of it is what has taught me the importance of writing as a quest, as a journey, as an opportunity, as you were pointing out as well. When it comes to the evolution of all of us, if you look at something like Joseph Campbell's Here with a Thousand Faces, we get the chance to be every version of every character in that story. We get to be the person who's being helped as well as someone who gets to help later. So I use that in writing fiction, in comics, also in writing the essay collection with Comics Lit. And it's why I also think that so many fans who know the value of comics understand the importance of a conversation like this. We've all been touched by them in some ways, whether it's in different mediums or from the source material. And it's that gift that I think sometimes we need help remembering, and that in a conversation like this, so many stories can be shared that can remind us all there's hope there, there's reminders there, there's examples, and from them we can find those roots of hope.
So I'm curious, what was the reason that you came up with this conception? Because this discussion was Seth's idea, And when he mentioned it to me, I was like, yes, this is definitely the one. He gave me 3 options. I was like, this is the one. But I want to know what made you even think of it.
I think of it because the value of comics is something that I've been able to enjoy not only as someone who reads them and writes them, but also as an educator. I'm an adjunct professor at Siena Heights University, and I've used comics like decelerate glue, like mouse, to reach my readers, to my students, and explain ideas that are very complex, that can oftentimes only be shared through a narrative that can provide the emotional experience that gives context that otherwise is lost to history through things like dates, times, figures, names. When you put the people and the passions and the competing desires into the mix, what you really find then is a way that you can connect with those who might have put something like that at a distance. So the importance of that value is where I started with, but it also came to the times when I was at my saddest, or that I was struggling with something, that I would pick up a source material that I knew was going to remind me that it's always hard. I mean, it's an easy thing to say that I had a dad who said, life is hard and then you die. That's the story. That's it, right? So this concept of it always being a struggle. So I would ask him, so why? What's the purpose? The answers aren't easy. And many times the places I was told to look didn't offer those answers to me. Comics did. When I think of these moments, I think of stories like Kingdom Come, which seems like it's a world on the verge of catastrophe. In fact, it is. It's suffered a terrible trauma. It's reeling from it. But in that, I find a character torn between his faith and also his future, and how he becomes a guide for a lost hero. And we get to see all of these heroes, all of the things that have torn them down, worn them down, broken them in so many ways. And yet we also get to see how, despite all of that, when given the opportunity, they stand. I mean, if you've ever been on the ground, you know how hard it is to push yourself back up.
Yeah.
But it's a gift, that ability to be there, to say, I'm here, it hurts. Here's where I can stand up and figure out how to move forward. Sometimes with comics, you have an opportunity to look to an example and say, sure, that's a fictional story, but the example is real. The challenges are honest, and they push.
We see that again and again, don't we? We see that again and again in comics. We see characters who persevere despite overwhelming obstacles, even when the smartest thing to do might be to just give in. But it doesn't matter. They have heart and they have purpose, and they get up and they keep fighting because it's what they should be doing. And it's inspiring, because there are definitely times in all of our lives where we're faced with challenges that we think are insurmountable. But we have to power through it, and we have to just get up and do it. And seeing an example of that, it's not like one character doing this. You see Peter Parker doing this.
Right.
You see Storm doing this. She had her powers taken away from her.
Yeah.
And that was a huge part of her identity and her purpose and everything that she was able to do. And she could have just said, you know what, I'm done. Enjoy your lives, and I'm going to go live off by myself, or I'm just going to, go work in a bookstore.
Yeah.
But instead, she used her inner strength. She didn't need her superpowers to be the superhero,
Right.
even after having them stripped. And I can tell you that most people would crumble under that kind of loss. But she ended up being the leader of the X-Men again without her powers. And then when she was given the opportunity to reclaim it, she was given the easy out, because Loki saw what she was, that she is a queen without her power.
Mm-hmm.
And he offered her the seat beside his throne, to be a queen, to be a goddess. He gave her powers back to her. And all she had to do was compromise her values. She wasn't willing to do it.
Right.
And he only loved her more for it.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times it is that story. We see, like you mentioned, we see it time and time again in comics where the theme is always to pick yourself back up and to persevere, right? That is literally the entire mantra of Captain America. Is,
I can do this all day,
I can do this all day, right? And some people are just like, oh yeah, it just means he's going to continue fighting. No, the idea is that when he gets knocked down, nothing will keep him down. He will continue to fight for what's right. Superman is another example of that. As much as a lot of people hate Superman, what makes Superman compelling to me, and being somebody who grew up a comic book fan and being a fan of that, is when Superman is in positions where he's not the strongest, where you put him in a position where he's outmatched, right? When he fights people like Doomsday, where he fights people like Darkseid, where he fights clones of himself, you know, in Bizarro and different characters like that.
Right, it's easy to say he's overpowered and then write him off. Right. But his inner strength is the Kent's in him. Right. It's the person that he became without his superpowers.
Right.
And the reason that he uses those superpowers for good. And I think the Doomsday version, or the Darkseid version of Superman shows, it's how you were raised and the kind of person you are within. It's not your superpowers that make you special.
Right, right. You know, it's a lot of these characters. I mean, there are characters that are, you know, even characters with like the most flaws. You know, Wolverine. Wolverine is probably one of the most flawed characters in all comics, right? Like everybody loves him, but in reality, he is a alcoholic. He is angry as all hell. But the thing is that in the end, again, I always say he's one bad day away from being a villain, right? But the thing is that because he has a good moral compass, he in the end he'll always do the right thing.
And I think that's one of the reasons people attach to him, is
Yeah.
because they can identify with being, like, you know, it's just a decision, which way am I going to go?
Right.
And they see him in that same struggle, but he makes the right choice.
He makes the right choice in the end, right? You know, like that's what makes a lot of these characters compelling for people, is that they do endure and persevere and pick themselves back up, you know, and it is something that we can take in ourselves. It's a lesson that we can take for ourselves and say, you know, don't give up when things get bad. You know, like when you are in the worst of times, don't give up. Things
You
will,
can get through this.
right. You know, there's a line. I mean, it's a line in history, and it's been repeated over and over again. But Harvey Dent says it in Dark Knight, in the Dark Knight, right?
The one to see yourself become a villain.
Well, there's that one, right? But he actually says it when he's getting arrested, right? And he says, the night is always darkest before dawn, right? And it's just kind of like, it's a reminder that you are going to go through really hard times. Things are going to be really bad, or they'll get really bad. But it's like, if you persevere,
They'll get better.
right? You know, I'm.
There is an end to this, and
Right.
there is a light at the end of this.
Exactly. You know, I'm former military. I was in the Army, and you know, different trainings that I've done. But I mean, the way I appreciate that. The way I got through a lot of the harder things was, it doesn't rain every day. That was literally the thought that I had in my head, is that
Just the crow.
yeah, that actually is the crow. It doesn't rain every day. You know, like it's not going to be bad the entire time here. The day ends eventually, right? So whatever
But,
suffering.
I mean,
you
that's
go
another good segue, though, because that's another character that he died. You know, like he
Right.
lost everything, and he's the one who says it can't rain all the time.
Right.
He's the one looking at how this is an opportunity. It's not always going to be bad.
Right.
No one could be at more of a loss than he is.
Yeah.
When he said this.
He lost everything. Right? He loses his fiance. He loses his life. He loses everything. And he had a bright future before he died. You know, he was a talented musician. Dies and comes back and deals with nothing but trouble, but continues to persevere.
To right those wrongs.
Right. You know.
And to help those who are alive in the moment.
Right.
They're like, okay, so it's not just about my vengeance, it's also let's take care of these people.
Right.
Which is another lesson that I think that we can learn from this.
Right.
You know how to do better in hard times? Help someone else.
Right.
Help someone who is hurting in the now. Like, okay, you've been harmed. See that. Use that to help them so that they're not being harmed.
Right. Right. Batman. 100%.
I feel like I've been a lot of talking.
I know.
You're doing great. And one of the things that I would also go back to, because I appreciate what you mentioned about your service, and thank you for it. As the son of a veteran, I understand the value and the importance. But I also was reminded of when we choose things. I was a soccer player, thought I was going to be a decent athlete, too many knee surgeries, and then I decided to pick up a safe sport called boxing. and I boxed for a while, and I really enjoyed it.
That's a very safe sport.
It's extremely safe.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it at all.
Yeah, no,
but
I did Muay Thai for a little bit. I get that one.
Right. And there's a thing about getting hit in the head, and it's going to happen if you get in the ring, and it's going to keep happening. And unfortunately, I had to get hit in the head a lot before I found that I could hit the other guy first, and then that I could actually do something in the process. So one of the things I learned afterwards was, if something was difficult, I would say to myself, at least I'm not getting hit in the head. And that was a comparison, that was a reminder. But it was also this thinking of, I know when it's bad, I know when it's hard. And that can be hard to see. It can be hard to recognize when it's bad. And it also can be hard to look at times when it's been bad, and there's an example of what to do. One of the reasons I thought about this panel as well, and I want to return to that question because I also feel that it feeds into the rest of this discussion, which is that comics have demonstrated their power and their ability. And the best example that you brought up earlier is Superman.
Mm-hmm.
See, back when Superman was created, he had such a bright start in comics that they were trying to figure out how to get him everywhere. So they got him onto his own radio show. And at the same time he was on his radio show, there was a rise of the KKK within the nation. And there was a question being raised among Americans. What will change the tide? What will make a difference? How will we respond? So the Superman radio show said, fine, we will respond. They actually, and there's much discussion and controversy about this, but they are credited with using code words and phrases that were considered to be secretive to only the organization, by exposing secrets, by removing the veil of secrecy, which is how these groups had grown in such large numbers. It gave the public an opportunity to say, we see you, we don't like what you're doing, and we're going to call you out. And the public response to that radio show was to turn around and say, we're not going to let this happen.
Yeah.
Superman is fighting the KKK. We will fight the KKK.
Right.
That response from the community, that willingness
And
is
saying
an
it's
example.
un-American. Superman saying it's un-American.
Definitely. So our history has demonstrated that this can be done. History can lose its value over time. Our value, our importance as those who know it is to tell the future generations, look what I know. Take this. It's gold. Bring it to the next generation. You have that responsibility once you're given a gift like this.
And if you go through the comic books of the past, you can see that these things have happened, and that art reflects the times and the struggles that were happening at that time.
And they do.
So you can use it as a resource to find out.
And you can use that to build on. History has shown us examples of how it's worked in the past. Yes, media is different now, but it was the public response to those stories. It was the willingness to say, okay, this is how it's happening. We see it happening. There's a popular phrase in New York, came about right after 9/11. See something, say something. Well, you have an opportunity in the same way. If you see injustice in the world, if you see that there is a tide happening in your community, you have two choices. You can either be crushed by that tide, or you can make a choice about how you're going to respond to it. We believe that comics have shown the ways, and when I think even about modern versions, I'm reminded of Selena Kyle.
Yeah.
Who not long ago, when there was an uprising and Gotham was becoming a police state, she returned home, back to the grounds where she had grown up as a pickpocket and a thief. And she realized one thing, when it gets bad, no one else is going to care about this community that I came from. But I know who they are, I know what they need, and I can be there for them. So, you don't have to.
She had an out. She didn't have to do that.
No, she didn't have to. She made a choice. So you can go out into the world. You can seek things. But look around you. You have a community that might need your help to your left or to your right. And it's them that you can say, okay, this is where I'm going to make my impact. If you can love the person next to you and the person next to them, look what you started. Look at the power you have created.
And I think the important thing about that is she could have just donated money, which that's great. That is an amazing way to help if you have those resources. But she chose to go back and physically help the people that she could help in person. And sometimes it's just about the person next to you. Sometimes it's just the people in your little community. If you can help them, then they can help the next group, and it ripples out. And eventually, you've impacted this enormous amount of space just by helping the people right here. And that is another lesson that comic books can teach you, because the ripples that happen, the inspiration that people get from these characters, you pass it forward, you pay it forward.
Right. Absolutely.
We also took an opportunity to ask some of those who contributed to Comics Lit if they had things they wanted to share and add. And if you don't mind, I have a piece from Eric, one
Please.
of our writers. He is the one who wrote the essay where he proves through research that the story of Superman is the story of Moses. And he touched on something really lovely. He says, superheroes have helped me form a moral compass from a young age. While religion is an important fixture in my life, superheroes do what great fiction does. They place interesting characters into different challenges that make us refine our worldview. Superheroes set the critical standard for me that dictates how I should live my life. Now, he goes on to say more about that, but what I believe is valuable and important is his understanding of saying, look, we're going to look to something. We're going to look somewhere, and we believe that there are great examples and models within comics. Most importantly, not everyone is a Superman fan. Not everyone is a Batman fan or a Daredevil fan, but there is such a wide range of characters that you can see yourself in so many different ones and look to the examples they show. Many times they can demonstrate. I love the example of someone like, say, Batgirl. Right? When we saw the moment that Barbara was attacked by the Joker and the implant that had given her the ability to walk was damaged, and she was looking at him like, you think I'm beaten? Buddy, the worst thing you could do is force me to rely on my mind. Watch me take you down. And that sort of ingenuity and that resilience and that ability to say, what you see as a weakness is my greatest strength. Allow me to demonstrate it to you. Like, the possibilities are there, the examples are there. We want to encourage you. Those stories you loved and knew, you loved and knew them for a reason. You love and know them for a reason. And when you return to them, they're going to give you the examples that you can use to say, this is how we do it. This is how it's been done before, and this is how I can do it myself.
And I want to use Eric as an example. He is someone where his faith is very important to him. And that's not something that you see a lot in many of our communities. In fact, because of misguided people, people of faith have been given a very bad name at this point. But you see characters like Daredevil, who are also in a similar situation, and he might even question his faith at times, but to show it on the page that he is pursuing his heroic means, but keeping his faith and maintaining his actual personality, despite what other people think.
Yeah, he's a devout Catholic through every story.
And he struggles with that, with the things that he's doing and the things that people are doing around him, but he has that representation. And then another thing is that comics, even if it's something like trying to find yourself and feeling lost because you feel invisible, no one sees you, you're never represented on the page or on the screen, comic books are one of the first places that put effort into putting diversity into these worlds. Were they clumsy with it? Sure. But that's what happens when you try something. You make mistakes, but at least they made the effort. Years before it was something that was popular to them.
I'm also going to give you the last reason that I wanted to do this panel. It terrifies me to be up here right now talking about this. I don't have all the answers. In fact, when I suggested the title, I knew very little answers. I could generally recall the Superman and the KKK story. But I knew that the fear of that and the risk was worth it. I believed, okay, if you want to do something, put yourself out there, put yourself up on a panel, stand up, and take your best swing. Answer in the best possible way. This scares me. It terrifies me. I don't know if you noticed in the first 10 minutes, I went like bright red. There was sweat coming down my face. I was like, who do you think you are to answer this question? Like, what authority are you going to stand on?
I'm so glad you said that. Because you get up here and you're like, okay, I can talk about nerd stuff, but this is very serious. Like, this is a little deeper than what most people are here to experience. We're here to celebrate art and, have fun. But then you brought this topic, and the activist in me said, okay, this is important, we need to do that. And then there's that moment of, well, who am I to talk about it? Like, how do I have the answers to this? And, we have some of the answers. We don't have all of the answers.
Part of it also comes with experience, though. Like, like when you have experience, when I say in the field, I mean, like, in activism and kind of, in dealing with certain things, with, like, I'm Hispanic, so I come from that background, coming from different communities,
We talked about representation a minute ago, like, you know, coming from communities that don't have that much representation. Now we have a crap ton of it, but I mean, like before, you know, when I was growing up, there was like maybe one Latino superhero, right? So for the most part, the hero, the character that I identified the most with was a mascot. Guy that doesn't take off his mask, mainly because he's very ugly under that mask, Deadpool. But I mean, like, you know, I found Deadpool in '96, right? So he was about 4 years old when I found him. And I gravitated towards that character hard because he's sarcastic. I identified with his personality, right? But you know, there wasn't a lot of like representation and things like that. And I was talking with a couple of the other guests here about like the importance of that, the importance of representation in general, is because you want to be seen in these characters. You want to be seen, you know, amongst these pantheon of heroes and gods and everything.
You want to be seen and recognized and valued, and then you also want to be able to see yourself as the hero, and not just the side character in your own story.
Right, exactly. You know, so that's what, you know, I've gotten into conversations with people where they're like, well, why does representation matter? That's why it matters. Is because I don't want to be the side character. I want to be, I want to be the main character just as much as you want to be the main character. You know, and I feel like that's something where when you have representation in comics, that's where you get to be that character. You get to be in that position. You get to feel that feeling that other people have felt for their entire life. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that was my situation with Catwoman. My entire essay starts out with me trying to find representation for myself. Like, I am biracial, there just aren't a lot of people who look like me in the media, especially when I started. And when I was reading as a kid, like, that stuff just wasn't there. There was a biracial girl, it was the mulatto girl that doesn't have a name, and she's referenced for no other reason than to prove that the hero is kind to her. You know, like, she's really just a tool. But I found my personality choices in Catwoman. I saw that she's strong and she isn't defined by those around her, and she actually gives some of the heroes a run for their money. And then she decides, you know what, I can be a hero too. I don't have to be defined by what you think I am. So seeing her personality, it wasn't her physique that I identified with, but then guess what? That changed too, and she happens to have multicultural versions of herself.
There's two that I can name right now, because
it was actually the Jim Mallon one that I first, because she's tall and has curly hair, and that was the first one that actually looked like me, but she still was not biracial.
Yeah.
But now we have Zoe Kravitz, you know.
I would say Zoe Kravitz is the one that always comes to mind just because she is biracial.
Right.
But I mean, you know, in the 80s, they started kind of, there's multiple versions of Selena Kyle.
Right, in the comics where she's
biracial.
brown.
Right, yeah. You know, Batman Year One is a good example where, you know, she's clearly black.
Yeah, there's no ambiguity there.
Yeah. Well, then also, I mean, you know, you had a black woman player in the 60s as well, and that's, you know, again.
Yeah, Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt, and Eartha Kitt was an amazing Catwoman.
Yeah, she went all in.
She did. Yeah.
She made Catwoman her own.
Yeah. I love that portrayal of Catwoman because, like, I remember listening to an interview where she was just like, you know, it wasn't the intention. It was just kind of was there, and they were like, we need somebody to play the character, and she was like, okay, I'll play it.
Yeah.
And she killed it.
She made Catwoman her version. Like, she didn't go in and say, well, how are they doing it? I'll do that. No, she was her own version of Catwoman.
We've gone off on so many tangents, but I mean, it's fine because we're still kind of like where we're.
I mean, that's the thing. This is an eternal conversation that we can have, and we can go on these tangents because this is one of the things that art does. It distracts us from what's going on in the world, and it inspires us to overcome.
And it's relevant. I mean, it's everything that we talked about right now is relevant now, but it has been relevant for the last 40 to 50 years. You know, so I mean, it's.
As long as comics have existed, they've been portraying what's been going on in the world and showing you examples of how to overcome and be a better version of yourself.
Correct. Oh yeah. And again, that's always been the thing. I mean, starting from the beginning, you look at what a lot of these characters are, and the experiences that they've had. I mean, like Batman is based on trauma. You know, yes, he's a rich kid, but at the same time, he lost both of his parents. His entire persona is based on how do I instill the fear in the people who are trying to scare everyone else in them in a way that Like what scares me most, and how do I project that onto
Right, so
the
that
people who
another
are
kid
scared?
doesn't suffer what I suffer.
Right, you know, like his whole, like there's a nobility behind, like, I want to stop all crime. When you really look into it, it's like, yeah, you could go about it in a better way. But I mean, it wouldn't be as fun as watching, you know, Batman beat up a bunch of dudes on the street, right?
And if he were perfect, it would be an uninteresting series, and no one would be able to identify with the things in his personality,
Right.
because none of us is perfect.
That's where a lot of it changes. We were talking about Absolute Batman earlier. And, if you've read the Absolute Batman series, they changed it. He's not rich anymore. You know, he is a poor kid from the slums.
And it makes a huge difference.
It makes a
doesn't
big
it?
difference in the character because now you relate to him a lot more. You know.
The interesting thing I find about that is in both versions, we meet a young Bruce Wayne in which he is being defined by the world around him and then is choosing how he's going to define himself and reshape that. So the original Bruce Wayne is always going to be seen from that moment as the boy whose parents were murdered until he makes a choice to become a figure that people will fear. And that's something all of us face. The world wants to say you're one thing. It wants to look at you and say, oh, we know what you are. You're this. And we all know that we're multifaceted. To quote our Walt Whitman, I contain multitudes, right? I contradict myself. Those things that show the many pieces of us are about how we can then turn around and say, allow me to show you through the thing that I'm doing who I really am. How what you see is what you expect, and how what I show you is going to contradict those expectations. And in both examples, you've got a character who is going to decide, no, I will not be seen as the poor rich boy whose parents got killed. I'm going to be a defender of the oppressed. I'm going to fight crime. In the Absolute version, I'm not going to be the guy who lost everything. I'm going to be the guy who fought to get it all back. Like, there's a narrative that others will want to put on you, and there's a narrative that you are going to write for yourself. Which narrative that's going to be, we each decide. We decide it daily. We decide it in moments. I mean, to quote your Deadpool, going back to Deadpool 2, 2 or 3 moments. 2 or 3 moments is all it takes to be a superhero. It's just not brushing it. So that example where
And
it's
then he ruins that, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just in perfect Wade fashion.
But what it offers, though, is that ability to say, look, you know, you can fail every day. You can fail 90% of the time, 99% of the time, but in a moment when it counts, you could be more than just the failure you define yourself or the world define you by. You can actually do that thing. And each time you do it, nothing's stopping you from doing it again. Only you. That's the only limitation.
You are your only obstacle.
Right.
Yeah. That's the only limitation. I mean, because the things we choose to do are hard. You know, the things that are important to us are not easy. Our desire to say, but it's worth it to pursue it, that it's worth it to chase it. No writer who ever dies with a pencil in their hand says, I'm a failure. You know, it's not about what they published, it's about what they wrote. It's about what they dedicated their lives to.
Right.
You think about the people who created these great works of art that exist for thousands of years after them. They didn't do it because they wanted it to be in the moment. They wanted it to be something that affects people for as long as possible. We have that ability too.
Yeah.
Right, and then in the end, these characters, these heroes decide that as long as I have breath, I will continue to fight this breath so that those who come after me can do the same.
Yeah, I remember the shock of the death of Superman in the 90s, and I would read that story over and over again because the one thing that I could never get over was the moment when they're saying, you can't beat this guy unless you die with him. And the willingness to keep punching, knowing the whole time the only end is that I die.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't, like I would read that over and over again and think to myself, at what point in my life will I ever come to that? And yet, if we look around, there's a chance that we could all be faced with a version of that. And who will it be? I know that in that moment, that's a story that's going to come to my mind. And I'm going to ask, what will you do? Who will you be?
Who are you going to channel
We
when your
hear-
time comes, right?
Yeah.
We hear the phrase all the time, oh, is that a hill you're willing to die on, right? It's like, yeah, I am. You know, I mean, I will defend not only the thoughts, but I mean, like, I will defend people who are in need of defense in any situation where I can be a pillar. You know, and that, again, I think part of that also comes from me being a comic nerd. Just like, you know, these are lessons that I've learned from the heroes that I look up to. you know, is that you defend the defenseless no matter what the cost is to yourself.
Right.
You know, and I think that was also something that got drilled into me when I was in the military, really, specifically in the units that I was in. You know, it was, you know, the model that I live by the most is do what's right because it's the right thing to do. You know, so I mean, yeah, this stuff does influence people, and to some people who are unknowing, it might seem silly to take lessons from a comic, but I mean, at the same time, for those of us here who know, comics are full of nothing but lessons.
Right.
You know, so you know, it's modern mythology, and that's what mythology is there for, anyways, is moral myth. You know, and comics are that.
Agreed.
Right.
Preach it to the choir.
Exactly. So time flies when you're having fun. We've got about 3 minutes left here.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for anybody here? All right, so I'm gonna get into the wrap-up questions here then real quick, because we've had a lot of fun here, and I can have this conversation all day.
And if you wind up coming up with questions, you're welcome to come visit us at our booth.
Right. So we're gonna get into less serious questions. Even as much as I love this conversation, like I seriously don't want to end this conversation right now. But what is your favorite kind of taco? I know it's a different audience though.
I like the ones that are made at home because it has all my favorite ingredients on
There you go.
You remember my answer from last time?
I ask this question in every.
That's okay.
interview, so
it. Thousands of people.
There's a standard by which I judge, and for certain things, it's certain meals. But for me, when it comes to a taco or a burrito, it's al pastor.
right. That's right. We had this conversation.
We did have this conversation. That's the staple. It's the bar of measurement by which, right?
Right.
If I go into a place that has biscuits and gravy, I'm going to get your biscuits and gravy, and I want to see is it good biscuits and gravy or not. Same
Right.
thing with tacos.
So I said this the last time we did, which was about a year ago, but there is a right or wrong answer to what is your favorite taco. In the Latino community, al pastor is the litmus test. So any restaurant you go to, you get al pastor. If it's good, everything in that restaurant is going to be good. If the al pastor is crap, walk out. The only other thing that's in that thing, like in that realm, is if they have mole on the menu and it's not something that was poured out of a can. Okay. Most restaurants, mole is going to be made from scratch anyways, but if it's like, you know, yeah, they went to the store and bought some mole and did that, like,
My other standard is chorizo and eggs. If it's done correctly, then I know I'm coming back. And if it's not, then I'm going to remember you don't know how to make chorizo and eggs.
I'm kind of the opposite. If you mess up chorizo con huevos, you have no business cooking. Because that is probably one of the easiest things to make.
I would think so too, but it's another litmus test. Like, if you got it on the menu, I'm going to try it. If it's good, I'm going to tell you.
That is one of the easiest things to make. It's not hard to make chorizo con huevos. So what's some advice you might have for anybody trying to get into comic book writing or just into the industry in general?
Read it. Consume as much art as possible. Consume as much that is similar to what you're trying to do as possible to make sure that you actually like it, because you might start off and think, this is what I really care about, and then in the end, it's like, this is not the story we're trying to tell. So consume information so that it sits with you and that you are armed to create your own art.
I also recommend for anyone who wants to start with comics, one of the great pieces of advice I got was to start for something between 2 and 8 pages. See if you can tell a story in 2 to 4 pages, 2 to 6 pages, 2 to 8 pages, and learn what that experience teaches you about how you understand the medium and what you're trying to accomplish and what you do accomplish. But more than anything, give yourself the right to write each day, and don't make it something where, okay, I've done all these things and now I'm allowed to. Give yourself that permission that says, I deserve to write because I want to write, and that willingness is all the reason. That's the authority as I was standing on earlier. Your willingness to say and to want, that's your authority. That would be my best recommendation.
Nice. So what's next for you guys? Any upcoming projects, any teases that we got coming up here?
Well, we are going to be at Meadowlark in 2 weeks, so if you guys are willing to go to Oregon, I think we'll see you there.
You'll see us there.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're at the show. So.
We're working on volume 2 for Comics Lit. I'm working on a short story collection that goes with 52 Love, which is an intimacy book, but you know, it's all about eternal love, right? And it has short stories that take intimacy tips from my nonfiction book, 52 Love, and uses them as writing prompts. I'm working on film that I'm directing. It's in editing phase. And I have some stories that are on submission.
I write a monthly comic book series called Greedy Greg for Hapsy. So you can go to hapsy.com, or you can get the physical subscriptions, and you can get updated monthly issues of that, as well as characters called the Animal Pollution Patrol. I've got a comic project coming up with SYD Studio Productions, so if you see Stephen Yu out there, stop by, say hi, and maybe give you some teasers about that. We will be at Metal Lark, I'll be at Cape and CalCon in August. I've actually got a bunch, so I'm not going to do a laundry list, but if you stop by the table, I'll tell you where you can, find my stuff, and give you a list of more.
That actually perfectly leads into the last one I have here. So where can everybody follow you guys? Where can they learn more about you? Where can they kind of see what events you're going to be going to, all that kind of stuff? Okay, pluggables. Give me all your threads.
Storieswithseth.com. Go to the website, Instagram, Seth the Writer, podcast, Storytelling with Seth. Stop there.
And I am across social media at Ms. Tanya Todd. You can go to my website, follow my newsletter, Instagram, Facebook, and stay abreast of what I'm working on there too.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Tanya Todd and Seth Singleton.
Thank you. Can I also give a quick to my amateur videographer? I handed this guy a camera. I said, "Can you film me?" And he has not stopped. So thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't know what I was asking.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks everybody.